Academy. My name's Wesley. This time we are talking about fan communities, fandoms, fan fiction, that's you, that's me, fan art, and gatherings and conventions and all that kind of fun stuff. These days we can't really gather in person in most cases, and so things are a little bit different and a little bit in the air, up in the air. People don't know quite what fan communities will look like in conventions and things, but a lot of places have already made plans to just meet online in the way that Signum Academy has always done. And so maybe we're a little bit ahead of the curve on this one for a change. The main idea of fan community seems to be a way for people who like the same stuff to get together and talk about it. The biggest one has got to be the wizarding world of Harry Potter. This is the most recent of the books that we've been talking about. Harry Potter and its author are very much still a current event and not something in the past. There are actually a lot of pieces in the news recently about J.K. Rowling, and some of her opinions have been getting a lot of headlines, actually. I don't know if you guys have seen that. So she is working on a new book, and it's being released bit by bit online. So there was that a while ago. And then she's gotten into some controversy about some comments that she's made on social media more recently. I don't know what effect that's had on her writing or her other projects. But the plan for the rest of this summer, actually, yeah, if you guys know more about that, please put something in the chat here because I'm curious. But the plan for the rest of the summer was actually to read the new book, as it's coming out. And part of what's fun about it is that she's asking for readers to send in their illustrations. So if you're into art, visual art, drawing and painting and whatnot, and you like her story, you can send in your pictures of it. I think the plan is that whenever it gets published, they'd actually include some of the pictures that people send them. So you could actually get published, which is pretty awesome. Now, I guess the book doesn't have a connection to Harry Potter, so it's a little less exciting, maybe, but still pretty cool. So worth a shot, right? Now, depending on how big of a kerfuffle, how big of a deal all this stuff on social media becomes, maybe we should find something else to read this summer. I don't know. Again, I don't know a lot about it, so if people out there have strong opinions one way or the other, I'd love to hear from you guys. If you're on Twitch right now, live, you can type right in the chat. If you're joining us at another time, go ahead and send an email. Find our website through Signum, the Academy page, and contact us through there. So as far as the world of Harry Potter, what most people know J.K. Rowling for, and what most people are most interested in, is, of course, the idea that, somewhere out there is something like Hogwarts. Not the theme park, right? And not just the kind of metaphor, right, of a magical world. But no, that there's actually a place that you can go and get sorted into your house, and meet other kids and people who love the idea of learning magic, right? Or just like knowing everything about these books, right? That's the true sort of fan experience, just totally immersing yourself in this world that, yeah, in some way, it's imaginary, it's made up, but somehow it feels real and important and just a lot of fun to spend time in that world. Um, so J.K. Rowling, very astutely, very smart, made kind of an online version of this. It was called Pottermore for a while, and then it sort of merged into it merged with the movie rights, I guess, or Warner Brothers or whoever. They created this thing that's now called the Wizarding World. So that's where the web page moved to, and there's all kinds of ways to connect with the story and with other fans on there. Now, I do think that they have made it a little bit less accessible since it's become the Wizarding World. I think there's even some money that changes hands before you can go, which is not something that is focused on in the books, right? Like paying for your classes at Hogwarts. We do know that, like, Ron and his family have some trouble, like buying all their school supplies and stuff, get a lot of hand-me-downs, right? So there is like an economic, right, the money element to all this. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't signed up for it myself. I don't know how much it costs to do stuff on there. So just totally want to check in with your folks before you go on there. So Pottermore, Wizarding World, that's the biggest one. That's probably the most popular one of our fan communities that are out there. Although it has maybe some issues, right? But the idea of a fan community in general, again, to sort of like back up and think about this a little bit more. Again, it's a way to really get to know all about this world and to meet other people who are interested in it too, right? That's what we're all about at Signum, right? That's one of the places that, if you're watching this, you've evidently discovered to kind of get to know other fans and to find out every little thing about your favorite books, right? Signum tends to focus on older books. Tolkien is the sort of main author. C.S. Lewis and the stuff that even older than them that they were reading, right? So there's that sort of more academic side of reading older stuff. There's a sort of current world, though, of fans and fan creations. That's sort of like the other side of the coin on this issue. So if you're interested in Tolkien and you're a certain kind of person who likes telling stories or drawing pictures, right? You probably have made some fan fiction or fan art. The idea there is that you set your own creative work in a world that you have read about or you've seen somewhere in a movie, right? And you can't obviously make any money from it because you didn't come up with, those characters, that world. But it is possible now to share that stuff a lot more easily. Like in the old days, you could go to conventions, you could subscribe to magazines, maybe things like that. You could get together with your friends in your neighborhood or in your town. But now you can find people who are fans of pretty much anything and share and read their fan fiction, their stories, or see their art. It's pretty amazing. So there's lots of places you can do this, right? Through social media, that's a big one. Through your different accounts, right? If you're into that sort of stuff. But there's places that are sort of dedicated specifically to more creative and more sort of academic or like digging in and learning about stuff, right? So the creative side, you've got places like the Watt app. It's called Wattpad, I think is the original, and then there's like an app version. So watt, it's spelled WATT, like, the power in a light bulb or whatever. That's one big one. The biggest maybe is just called fanfiction.net. So if you search for fanfiction, like you want to find or share something you've written, or read what other people have written, that's the one that'll come up. And again, I think they got an app now too. This picture looks like probably an app. It's just something I found. But you can sort of see the F and the F upside down, right? So fanfiction.net, probably the kind of original, the biggest repository, right? Place where this stuff sort of collects. And these are, again, places you would probably need to make an account of some kind. I don't believe they cost any money, though. You want to be a little careful because not everything that's out there is necessarily very good or very appropriate, right? So I can't really suggest that you go and start digging through all this stuff without a little bit of parental guidance. Hopefully somebody is kind of looking out for you, making sure you don't get into anything too risque. But there is a lot of room, right, for creativity. There's an incredible accessibility to all of this stuff now, for better or for worse. The other big place where you can get maybe a little bit better information, ideally, is through fandom, which is kind of a wiki, right? So it's like created by fans. In that sense, it's open. But it also has moderators and is updated and has some standards for appropriateness and just being supported by the text, right? So this is a Wikipedia sort of thing, specifically for different books, movies, all kinds of stuff, right? So just a way to, again, dig in and find out more information about the books that you love. The fandom that I go and look at a lot is the one for Philip Pullman. He's my favorite author as far as fantasy writers go. He's written a book recently, so there's a lot of new information that's still coming out. And I think he's working on a book right now. So that's exciting, right? If it's something that's current, that's still happening, you can go and actually put new information up there, stuff that nobody has identified or picked up on before. You can be the first one to put it there. That's pretty cool. If you're more interested in the creativity stuff, drawings, writing, that's awesome too. And these are just a couple big ones. There's many, many places like this out there. So find, what I would say is again, just be careful. Don't go and post stuff right away. Maybe just kind of lurk, be there and just read and see kind of whether you feel comfortable, whether it seems like a place that's friendly, that's just a place you want to spend your time, right? Before you put in the effort to share something, maybe people won't be that nice. You got to be kind of careful about this. But if nothing else, you can read and kind of get some ideas, and think about things from another perspective, right? Ideally, if you've got people, where you are that you can talk to in person, or your friends talking on Zoom and on Skype and FaceTime and whatnot, that all is a much richer kind of community, I think. These could become your friends, though. People that you meet through here. If you have that opportunity, if that works out for you, that's awesome too. So the idea of fan creations and then of fandoms, right? So this kind of playing on the word kingdom, right? This world that the fans create is in the background there. Now, to get a little more technical again, Hey, oh, cool. It's Gabriel. Gabriel's checking in briefly in the middle of the night. Whoa, my gosh! I've talked to Gabriel about Philip Pullman quite a bit. So I hope that he happened to come in right on that moment. So that he thinks that's all I talk about on here with you guys. But yeah, thanks, Gabriel. That's awesome. Do try to get some sleep though. Don't work too hard. Um, I was saying I was gonna get technical again. Uh, and this is about the Tolkien Society. So over there in the UK, where our buddy Gabriel is, there's a a group of people who actually got Tolkien's sort of seal of approval um, when they formed their fan club. Way back before there was internet, before there was any existing international sort of uh, world of Tolkien like there is now. Before all the movies, this this group still exists now too. They had Tolkien become the honorary president. His daughter is still involved in their operations and you know making sure that they are kind of again giving good information, giving appropriate, respectful readings of stuff. And they are, of course, now online, so it's a lot easier to get involved if you're not over there in the UK. Sorry, my cat is trying to join us, so I'm just going to grab her. This is Zoe. Zoe, say hi to everybody. All right. Then she won't climb over the computer too bad here. The the group, puts out a lot of magazines. You can see a couple over here, and bulletins and stuff. Proceedings, when they get together and have their conventions, they write up some of the papers and topics and stuff they talk about. And a lot of that stuff, again, is now pretty accessible, right? So you don't have to physically go or physically get a copy necessarily. I really like the idea of the Tolkien Society. I like that it's sort of official. I like that they have this kind of mixture of the old school and the new, right? They have the history, the tradition, but also are reaching out and trying to. One thing they do apparently is they send books to people all over the world. Just send them Tolkien books. If Tolkien is not super available in your area, try to get in touch with them. Maybe they'll send you a book. Like, it's worth a try. So that's pretty cool. And that's a lot of kind of the same sort of thing, I think, that we're trying to do at Signum. Again, Signum more kind of academic, but it also has this kind of fan community element to it. Speaking of which, I need to just check in. Yeah, of course, Gabriel did check in exactly when we were talking about Philip Pullman. Perfect, yes. But he says he will do. He will get his sleep. That's good. So yeah, depending on what time it is right now, maybe just come back and watch this as a recording. That's okay too. Okay. Yeah, about the Tolkien Society image here, I'm sure you guys recognize, the two trees. They got the stars. They've got the kind of old-timey, manuscript-looking scroll that's across. It's just I love their whole sort of look and feel. Very cool. So I was looking around and trying to find, Tolkien has got his Tolkien Society, so surely C.S. Lewis has something too. And it looks like there isn't actually as much of an official, presence for C.S. Lewis, which kind of surprised me. And I could be wrong about this. Maybe I just didn't find it. I didn't look super hard, to be honest. But there is something called the C.S. Lewis Foundation. There's a C.S. Lewis Journal. There's different sort of local societies. California, it looks like, has a pretty big one. And obviously C.S. Lewis is a huge deal. There's tons of fans out there. Maybe they just haven't all sort of collected together in the same way. And it's not that all Tolkien fans are part of the Tolkien Society either, but it doesn't, maybe there doesn't have quite the same official feel to it as far as Lewis's stuff. And in a way, Lewis is a trickier figure because so much of what he wrote was connected with his religious beliefs. His religious beliefs were not necessarily they didn't necessarily try to get people to believe in a particular church, though. And so, there's lots of possible, churches, institutions that people who like C.S. Lewis might belong to. Same goes for Tolkien. His beliefs weren't trying to lead people to any particular institution, but he didn't even put his religious beliefs kind of front and center the way that Lewis did. Tolkien's are present. I think you can interpret them from his writing, but you don't have quite the same in-your-face talk about God and the devil the way you do in C.S. Lewis. So I think that makes it a little bit trickier for C.S. Lewis to be as I feel like it's a little bit trickier to talk about C.S. Lewis as a result, because your own religious beliefs are probably going to come up at some point when you're talking about his writing. They don't have to. It's not required, I guess. But somehow it seems like most of these C.S. Lewis foundations, societies, etc., are kind of in a more religious mode or frame or something. And, not everyone's that interested in that sort of stuff. Some people are very interested in that sort of stuff. Okay, so again, you probably want to kind of look around and see where you would feel comfortable if C.S. Lewis is kind of your main interest. Anyway, as a fan of Philip Pullman, I know that he says a lot of pretty out there stuff as well. Maybe not for everybody, right? And that's kind of the fun of the fan community, right? You find people who like the stuff you do, and you can talk about that forever, right? And you don't have to talk about all the other stuff that you don't agree about with people. Although that can be fun too, and that's important, right? We got to have spaces where people who don't agree also will talk and kind of argue and work things out, hopefully. Anyway, so that's kind of my transition, I guess, to the Wrinkle in Time, which is the last of our 4 big books, right? Talked a little bit about Harry Potter, some of the controversy around that right now, around J.K. Rowling. Talked a little bit about Tolkien and Lewis, the big sort of titanic older figures. And then there's Madeleine L'Engle and her work, A Wrinkle in Time. Again, we mentioned this, had a recent movie adaptation from Disney that was pretty, successful. It seemed like people generally liked it. Where people maybe didn't like it as much, they talked about how it wasn't true to the book or something like that. And that's an argument that people always make when a movie comes out of a book that they like. But again, what I would say about that is the book is still there. So you don't have to just, interpret it through the lens of the movie now. You can set the movie aside and just read the book, and that's fine. You can just watch the movie and just think about that. Or it's another option to sort of look at how those things fit together. But you don't have to. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't really get why people are so upset by this sort of stuff. But, I'm open, again, to hearing your guys' thoughts on this if you have strong opinions. Now, I do think it is interesting that the movie adapted the story to include more diverse characters, right? More racially, more ethnically, more perhaps religiously diverse, right? All those quotes that Madeleine L'Engle uses, they adapt them and bring in quotes from a lot more places than where she was taking them from, right? So there's that kind of, again, religious or philosophical diversity that is brought into the movie. And I think that's really important and really worthwhile. I think that there's no time like the present to get more diverse voices and more people involved in fan communities. The world of fantasy, sci-fi literature has plenty of classics, right? Old books, and those tend to not be super diverse. They're a product of a time in history when people were not necessarily as conscious or aware of the importance of racial diversity. That's just a fact. Those books are still beloved. People still love them. People still read them and make blockbuster movies out of them and bring new readers to those books. And hopefully, more of those readers now are going to look like the country and the world that we live in now, right? Are going to be racially diverse, religiously diverse, ethnically diverse. Their reading of those books is going to be shaped by the things they experience in their everyday life. That's, again, just sort of the way that we are as people, as readers. We can't help that. And currently, what's happening now is going to have a big impact on the way that we read these books. That's inevitable. We can't pretend that the way that people are presented in literature doesn't have a big impact on people as they read. There's a really important discussion around diversity and its place in what we consider to be great literature. And that's been going on, for a long time. I don't want to pretend like suddenly now we should notice this. In terms of like academics, people have been talking about this and writing about it, arguing about it for a long time. I think that what's different now is that our sort of everyday discussions are much more centered on race and specifically Black lives and how the society has and hasn't changed to accommodate, right, to respect, to hold up different people and their voices. So I obviously I love these books. I want people to read them. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the level of diversity or the lack of diversity in some of these books and some of the adaptations that we kind of looked at last time. My take on it, again, there's no time like right now to read and talk about some of this stuff. And so I don't want to shy away from the social media stuff that J.K. Rowling puts out there. Again, she is a little bit more complicated because she's still alive, right, and still writing now, and what she says has kind of maybe a more immediate impact on her readers as a result. So that's something that we can, I think, talk about, I hope. I don't want to go there just yet, though. Again, I kind of want to give a little bit of time and space for any listeners, anybody out there to comment on that. If you do have strong feelings, if you really would rather not read J.K. Rowling, I do want to give some space for your take on that, and I will try to take it into consideration before deciding if that's what we should read later in the summer. But for now, I thought it would be nice to look at something by Tolkien that's a little less well known. He's got this little book called Rover Random, and it's a book that's specifically it comes out of a story that he was telling his kids. So I thought this would be nice. I think I've mentioned on here I have a young son now, and not a newborn anymore, but he's going on 6 months. Uh, and The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings is a little bit beyond what I could read to him probably. Rover Random is too, frankly. He's not going to be able to pay attention for even a really short book like this. But it's got some really nice pictures. That's honestly, I think, my favorite thing, maybe about the Rover Random book, is that it has these beautiful illustrations that Tolkien made. And so I wanted to, get some practice reading a book for kids. So I thought that this would be a good one to read. It's less well known. It's still a fantasy adventure story, still very strongly in Tolkien's kind of imaginative world, although not specifically connected to The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. We're kind of in maybe a little bit more of a dreamlike world in this one. More kind of open and permeable. Things kind of come in and go a little more freely. In Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien is really trying to kind of nail things down there, I think. So I think this will be a fun one. If you have access to a copy of the book, I hope you can read along. So go ahead, start reading as soon as you can. And in a couple of weeks, for our first meeting in July, we'll discuss sort of the overview of the book, Rover Random, where it comes from, what Tolkien is up to in telling this story to his kids, and we'll go from there. So probably focus more on the art side of things in the second meeting, and more of the kind of creative, storytelling stuff that you might want to do in that second meeting in July. So that's the plan. For anybody out there listening currently, plan to read if you can a little bit of Rover Random. Be thinking about the process of storytelling that we see Tolkien doing in the book, and bring any questions, any comments on that for our first meeting in July. Okay. Again, this is going to be looks like a little bit of a shorter meeting. I think that's okay. I do really want to hear from you guys if you have some thoughts about the Harry Potter Wizarding World stuff, the stuff J.K. Rowling is working on now, and some of the controversies around her comments. If you have strong feelings on that, questions, comments, send those in. Or really on anything to do with these kind of major books that we've been focusing on. We are in the later part of the summer gonna read something else. My plan was for it to be Ichabod, her new book. I still think that's probably fine. Read it, see what you think, and we'll likely discuss that. But if people have strong objections, want to throw out some other books to read, there's plenty of other great stuff out there. So I'm open to suggestions. Okay, I do hope that you're reading, and wherever you are, that you're finding people to talk to read with. If you really want, more friends to read with, you can find them out there on the internet. Just be careful. It's some weird stuff you'll find out there too. I really hope that Signum Academy and what we're up to here is a safe and a good place for you guys who need people to talk to about this stuff. So I really appreciate your time, as always. I enjoy getting to talk about these books and these topics with you, and I hope that it's helpful. I hope that you're enjoying your reading as well. I'll let you guys go then, wherever you're at. Take care of yourselves.